Hello, students. Today we're going to be working on Unit 3, Lesson 1 on the business cycle. And this is really an interesting lesson, and I hope one that is really relevant to your life. As you listen to the news, as you hear people talking about the economy, one of the things that you're going to hear a lot is this word recession or an expansion. So we want to try to uncover what these are and understand them fully so that you can be an informed citizen. You can know what you're talking about. There are lots of people who say things about economics. They don't always know what they're talking about. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to start with these notes. This handout is there on your page to be printed, so you can just open it up and print it from home. If you don't have the ability to print from home, you can certainly still follow along in the notes, and you can handwrite notes or do notes however you want. I do have all of these PowerPoints copied on the page as well. Okay, so let's get into it. First of all, we want to remember this idea of micro versus macro. So remember that we have been studying this whole class. We've been on a micro level. We've been talking about small, like the market for corn or the market for water bottles, okay? We've been talking about individual businesses, but now we're transitioning to a macro level. So that macro level is going to be the large scale economy. What's going on in the world at large? So the first thing I need you to know is just this word. There's a lot that I can tell you about gross domestic product. And in fact, lesson 2 is going to be completely about gross domestic product, what it is, how it works. Okay. But for now, what I want you to do is I want you to just understand what it is. Gross domestic product is, okay, here's your definition, but I'm going to give you a simpler one. Gross domestic product is simply how much a country makes in a year, okay? Like all the goods and services that they produce within a year, all the stuff that they make, how much is it worth? So a small country would have a smaller number than a large country. A poor country would have a very small number, whereas a rich country might have a really large number, okay? So just recognize that this is a number that can be used to express how good we're doing. Okay, we abbreviate it as GDP. All right, so what does GDP tell us? Here's what it tells us. And I'm thinking, I don't think this is on your page. I don't think this is in your notes. What does GDP tell us? Basically, it's this. If from one year to the next, GDP is getting bigger, then we know that the economy is expanding. It means that we're doing better than we were before. If GDP is getting smaller, then we know that the economy is going down. The economy is shrinking. Okay, that's going to be really important as we get into the business cycle. So today our lesson is on the business cycle. What is the business cycle? How does it work? Okay. Well, first of all, understand that there are 4 phases of the business cycle. So the business cycle allows people to understand the direction the economy is going and plan accordingly. What's going on with our economy? People want to know. Business owners want to know, is this a good time to start a business? Is this a good time to expand my business? Well, one way to kind of think about that is through the business cycle. What part of the business cycle are we in? And nobody knows the future. Nobody can foretell exactly what's going to happen, but economists want to be able to predict. We want to be able to predict. We're kind of like weathermen, right? We want to be able to say what's going to happen tomorrow, and people want to know. And so economists use the business cycle as a way to predict the future. Although it's not perfect, we know that the business cycle is very consistent. We know that it's going to happen in this order. We just don't know when the order is going to happen. Okay. So here's a picture of your business cycle. And if you look at your handout, you can see that it's right there, right? Notice coming up is the expansion, the peak contraction, and then the trough. So these are our 4 levels, and I want you to go ahead and fill them in on your notes. The expansion is when we're going up. So I'm going to grab a marker here. Let me show you. So you've got a business cycle is like a wave. Okay, can you see that? No, you can't. It's like a wave. When you're going up, when you're on the upward slope of the wave, you're expanding. When you get up to the top, you've peaked out. This is your peak. Okay. Coming down, you have your contraction. In other words, the economy is getting smaller, tighter. And then at the bottom, you have your trough. So, really, this is the basic thing that you need to know about the business cycle. So, we're going to talk about each of these phases and we're going to look at some characteristics of each one. So, let's start with expansion. Let's look at the characteristics of an expansion. First of all, well, let me go ahead and put all these words up here for you, and then you can fill them in. Wages increase. So people are making more money. People have jobs. Everybody's got a job, low unemployment. There's a lot of optimism. There's a lot of spending of money. People are going out buying houses, buying cars, buying clothes. There's lots of people shopping and doing lots of things. There's a high demand. So people aren't just like holed up in their houses like we are today. There's a high demand. Businesses are starting. And then here's a really key point. It's easy to get a loan. Why would that be important? Because if I can get a loan, then that means I can make large purchases. So I can like go buy a house or a car or start a business because it's easy to get a loan. And then businesses make profits and we see a rise in the stock market. And so if you've paid attention at all to the news lately, guys, you know that during this COVID-19 thing, we've had these crazy like drop in stock prices and then like crazy up again. And what's going on? Well, we'll talk about that. That's this called an external shock. That's what's going on to our system. But stock market prices can indicate what's going on in the broader economy. Not all the time, but they can. All right, next up we have the peak. So we get to the top, we go up, 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 we're growing, things are doing good. At some point, the economy is going to peak out. At some point, we're like, okay, we're done here. It's going to stop growing. GDP is going to reach the maximum level. How do we know it's reached the maximum level? Well, honestly, it's kind of hard to know. Generally speaking, it's when they're not hiring any more people. Generally, it's like, okay, we've kind of slowed down a little bit. And then really the way that you know that you've hit a peak is when you start going down the other side. And then you're like, oh, that was the peak. 2 days ago was the peak, right? Today we're contracting. So this is the peak, the top. You can't get any better, okay? A contraction. During a period of contraction, businesses are going to cut back. So a contraction is when things are bad. People begin to be pessimistic. They stop spending money. Banks stop lending. Unemployment, everybody starts losing their jobs, right? Things are not good. I think it's fair to say that we're in a contraction right now. I mean, the fact that businesses are, because of this COVID-19 thing, are basically having to just stop their business. I mean, it's this very unusual situation. So this is not a normal contraction, but just understand that this is what it looks like. People are having to cut back, lay off, wages go down. Now, a trough is when you've hit the bottom. Okay, how do you know you've hit the bottom? Have we hit the bottom today? Are we going to hit it tomorrow? Well, this is what economists are trying to always predict, and it's kind of hard to know. What we know about the trough is that it's when we bottom out, you reach the lowest point. There's high unemployment and low spending. Things are not good at the trough. Things are as bad as they're going to get. Stock prices are low. Things are not good. Okay. But generally speaking, when you hit a trough, you start to go back up again. Guys, this is normal. It is normal for a business, for an economy to go through the business cycle. We go through it all the time, every couple of years. You're going to trough, expansion, trough, it's just up and down, up and down, up and down. That's normal. So when you hear the word recession, sometimes we think like, oh, recession, the world's ending. Well, no, recessions are actually really normal. They happen pretty regularly. It's just that normally they just kind of hit their trough and come back up again. So what happens if they don't come back up again? Well, that happens sometimes. Obviously, what's this picture from? Recognize this from your history lessons? Yeah, this is your Black Friday picture, right? Here, Black Friday? Why did I say that? Tuesday. Oh, okay. No, this is from the Great Depression when the stock markets fell and there was a horrible run on all of the banks. And this was a picture from Wall Street, famous historical picture that I'm sure you've seen many times in your life, and you know what this is about, right? Okay, a depression. So, what happens when this just doesn't get better? And that's called a depression, an economic depression. It's a prolonged contraction. It lasts a really long time, okay, is a depression. So stagflation is something we're going to learn more about in lessons to come. For now, I just want you to write down the definition. A stagflation is a decline in GDP. So that means you have a recession going on. Things aren't good. You have a recession. At the same time that you have price levels going up, that you have inflation. So stagflation is a pretty unusual thing. You've got GDP going down at the same time you've got inflation going up. Usually GDP and inflation go together. Generally speaking, they tend to go together. Okay, so business cycle. This is the business cycle. This is your basic business cycle lesson. You want to understand expansion peak, contraction trough, and know the characteristics. So up next, you have an activity to do on the business cycle that I hope you'll really enjoy, and there will be further instructions on that. All right, thanks guys. Thanks for watching.